What's good? It's Woog. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. Whew. Khabib Nurmagomedov, 28-0, is set to defend his lightweight 155-pound UFC title versus Justin Gaethje, 22-2. Yes, 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 yes. Whew. Boy, this is one hell of a fight. On its surface, sure, it's wrestler versus striker, although that striker has a wrestling background himself that he just doesn't use in MMA except for defensively, stuffing the takedowns and such. I've been going back and forth on this one. There are just variables and circumstances that you can't ignore. There's of course the COVID pandemic. There's the fact that Justin Gaethje has been much more active than the champ. He's already fought twice since Khabib's submission of Poirier in his last fight. And those two Gaethje fights were the TKO over Cowboy Cerrone, and then of course that long, brutal destruction of Tony Ferguson. But let's look at Khabib's inactivity for a moment. Since missing the 2 years due to recurring knee injuries from 2014 to 2016, he then fought twice in 2016, once in 2017, twice in 2018, which were the title win versus Al Iaquinta, and then the Conor McGregor submission, and then once in 2019 versus Poirier last September. So he hasn't exactly been the most active fighter, so a lengthy time between fights is nothing new. But one, his father, best friend, mentor, Abdulmanap Nurmagomedov, just passed away in July due to complications from COVID. Plus, it will have been 13 months since Khabib's last octagon appearance by the time he steps in the cage versus Justin Gaethje, who, let's be honest, has been firing on all cylinders since his fight of the year worthy loss versus Dustin Poirier just 2.5 years ago, which feels like a lifetime ago. But yeah, that was 4 fights ago, 5 if we're counting this upcoming Khabib fight. Now I've heard believers and skeptics on how much Gaethje's improved in his MMA well-roundedness since that loss. I mean, he's even acknowledged, along with his super trainer Trevor Whitman, I believe on Rogan's podcast, that Justin still has to fight the urge to brawl. It's only through training, guidance, and reframing his fight mindset that Gaethje's become a much more disciplined, evenly paced, and strategic fighter while maintaining all of the explosion in his strikes, punches, and leg kicks. In fact, his per-punch effectiveness has increased because he's become much more measured and selective. He basically executed veteran Edson Barboza and knocked him out cold by extending an exchange by continuing with his combination with 1 strike more than Barboza thought would be involved. And it was good night. Gaethje's precision and the timing of his punches has become so impressive. The problem is that his opponent here just has this extremely special set of skills. He has these techniques that he commits to in controlling his opponents and advancing in his wrestling positioning. It's this virus-like creep up his victim's body where his extreme physical strength in his hands and in his core is married to this technical nuance. He keeps his opponents so off balance after taking them down. They're either left without a hand or without their legs, which are often trapped. Oh, his opponents are just miserable in there. Go rewatch his fight versus Edson Barboza and the one against Michael Johnson. To say that he mauls opponents would be an injustice to how calculated he is on incapacitating your mobility, limb for limb, extremity to extremity. He's canceling you. And Justin Gaethje and Trevor Whitman are very well aware of this. And Justin has been very clear on his key to victory by saying, I only got to kick him 8 times in the calves before he is compromised. So Justin wants to render Khabib's legs unable to shoot and then drive Gaethje back into the cage and then onto the mat. And if Khabib tries shooting with a bum wheel, Gaethje could put things to bed quickly. And Khabib and his team are very well aware of this. But I've got to wonder, just how hungry is Khabib? How focused is Khabib? How distracted is Khabib? Now, his past performances and disciplined lifestyle should leave us to assume that he's as ready for this as he always is. But I can't discount the human element of celebrity, of having tons of money, of grief. I mean, serious, serious grief. On the other hand, we know Justin Gaethje has been dying for this opportunity. He's foaming at the mouth, but so is Dustin Poirier, right? Now check this out. I'd actually picked Gaethje to beat Tony Ferguson in a prior video, a preview for what turned out to be a Tony bloodbath. My goodness. Tony's one of the very few that can endure those body-stiffening punches and kicks for that long. But Gaethje's win over Tony, as electrifying and as shocking as it was versus what I believed going in to be a somewhat diminished Tony Ferguson. Just remember that devastating freak knee injury, which canceled the third or fourth attempt at Khabib versus Tony, and then the surgery, and then somehow Tony still recovered in less than a year. He's had multiple 1+ year layoffs between certain fights. He'd only fought once in 2017, once in 2018, once in 2019, and then versus Gaethje in 2020 at 36 years old. And age and wear and tear, they just take their toll on even the baddest and most durable. I quite frankly hadn't been seeing the same Tony Ferguson that dominated RDA and stopped Edson Barboza. In fact, I think that the decline started around the time of the surgery, and I thought that then, like, this has to be the beginning of the end, right? So I thought that I started seeing some slippage in even his return fights versus Showtime Pettis and Cowboy Cerrone. And I'm talking slippage in his reflexes. We're talking about those boxing quick twitch reflexes. And then in his mobility. Look at how he's moving versus Barboza and versus Kevin Lee. And then how he moved against Showtime and Justin Gaethje. Now this isn't a let's reduce the credit that we give Gaethje for that terrific performance as an underdog, mind you. But it's just a stark reminder that the come forward and walk through hell to give hell approach that Tony had taken into that cage is nothing like we're going to see in Khabib's approach here. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if Khabib shoots within the first 20 seconds of this fight. I don't expect him to waste much time at all in asserting his game plan and not allowing Gaethje to have a lot of minutes fighting Khabib where he's most comfortable and dangerous. Now, if Gaethje can spend even 2 of the first round's 5 minutes in the stand-up, then that's great news for Gaethje. Now, if Gaethje stuffs a takedown, Khabib normally follows a failed takedown attempt with another immediate takedown attempt. And the second attempt is usually successful when the first isn't. And this is something that opponents need to be aware of. There is no stuffed takedown followed by separation into a prolonged stand-up. Khabib is constantly exercising his triathlon-like stamina where he could keep his foot on the gas under the assurance that his opponent will gas and that their will to battle will be broken by the 3rd or 4th round. The waters are really that deep. However, Khabib is now 32 years old. Wrestling is one of the most tiring sports, minute for minute, that there is. That's why even high school and collegiate matches are so short. It's exhausting. I wrestled a little in high school. 1 minute could often feel like 5 minutes. Your lungs and body are just pushed to the brink. Notice that even some of the most decorated wrestlers that enter the UFC prefer to spend their fights in the stand-up, especially when they enter their 30s. John Jones used to dominate his fights with the ground and pound wrestling. Not so much in his 30s, besides that Gustafsson rematch. Rampage Jackson was a wrestler, much preferred the stand-up through the second half of his career. Chris Weidman, Rashad Evans, Dan Henderson, Yoel Romero was an Olympian. Even Cormier's wrestling reduced as he aged. And Justin Gaethje, again, wrestling background, never uses it offensively in the UFC. It just burns too much gas. You quickly experience muscle fatigue. Khabib has been an exception in this regard. He stuck to his guns to where each opponent who faces him knows exactly what he wants to do, and damn it, he still does it. But can he do it as thoroughly and resiliently right now at 32 years old? Do the laws of wrestling and its demanding physicality with diminishing returns apply to him? Or can he still apply that young man's game plan on an elite Justin Gaethje? To prevent this, I also expect Gaethje to place his leg kicks low, just around the calf, instead of throwing a body kick that Khabib can catch and then drive him down. Also, if Gaethje does not have success in the first 2 rounds, how discouraged will he be in his ability to keep the fight on the feet? Again, he didn't need to do much to keep him versus Tony standing up. Tony obliged in the stand-up, for better or for worse. And again, Khabib isn't going to play that march you down and take one to give one game. He's not going to accommodate. As much as Justin's improved in his well-roundedness, styles make fights, and the Eagle, known as Khabib's special set of skills, might have Justin a little reluctant to pull the trigger in some of his combinations, especially once he's already been taken down once. If Khabib's studying tape, he'll notice that Justin's fallen in love with shooting that hard right hand and then following it up with that devastating left hook. It's that 2-3 combination. He ripped Tony with that several times. Now, Gaethje's got fast hands and obviously explosive power, but that combination is something that you can somewhat time and attempt the takedown within that. You can almost assume that that left hook is following that straight right. Where you don't want to guess wrong though is thinking punch and then timing that and then getting caught with a hard calf kick, because as Justin said, he believes that he only needs 8 good ones to change the dynamic of this fight. I don't think Khabib's going to allow that to happen. In light of everything that's been taking place in 2020, I don't expect Khabib to be at 100%, but I think that Khabib at 90% will still be enough to earn a tough but clear decision win versus Justin. I think that much of this fight will wind up on the ground, and Gaethje will spend a lot of time attempting to stand back up after being taken down. Now, he's better suited to do so than most because of his athleticism and his wrestling background, but those efforts will likely affect his effectiveness in the stand-up. I think that Khabib will work a lot of those wrist controls and trying to, roll Gaethje onto his shoulder, basically using a lot of the tried and true methods that keep him dominating fight after fight. I think Khabib will attempt chokes and might eventually sink one in. And I expect a few good ground and pound opportunities as well. But I'll say that Justin's resilience and survival skills will bring this fight into the later rounds. And although I was going to say Khabib should take this via decision, I'll actually change that to Khabib via late submission or TKO. Justin desperately wants to win this belt, so I think that he's going to expend a ton of energy trying to swing things in his favor, which will leave him with very little energy remaining to survive late once Khabib truly takes over. So I've got Khabib Nurmagomedov via a late stoppage versus the electrifying stud that is Justin Gaethje, who, I'll admit, is really tough to even picture losing given his last few performances. Khabib is just a different animal. Again, Tony was 36 and diminished reflex-wise, in my opinion. And Khabib doesn't mess around and is not inept in the stand-up himself. Plus, he knows how to transition those better than adequate stand-up skills into yet another takedown. This should mess with Gaethje's head a bit. So one last time, I'm going Khabib Nurmagomedov via late stoppage, submission, or TKO. But let me know your thoughts on this tremendous, highly anticipated bout. Who are you going with and why? By the way, I just really hope that both of these men make it to the cage and that the UFC's new arrival, Michael Chandler's backup services, aren't needed here. So leave your comments in the comments and please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you are into the fight talk. I'm Woog, thanks for tuning in.